Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
Today we're covering the first film in the Christian Bale era of Batman movies, Batman Begins!
Woohoo! Finally! Batman's origin story is brought to the big screen for the first time in this trilogy as he returns in this first movie to Gotham City after training an agent in how to fight evil. Donning the cape and cowl, he protects his city and strikes fear into the criminals of Gotham as a symbol.
Yeah, a symbol of something. Before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click notification bell to get updates on future podcasts and World of Paws videos.
Absolutely. Now all of you know who know us, that Christian Bale is my favorite Batman for the theatrical movies.
Yes.
And again, what took us so long to get to these?
Right? These should have been some of our first podcasts when we think about it. That way you could excuse the hour-long talk, for you at least.
Batman Begins was important in this DC universe because you'd had Michael Keaton, George Clooney, Val Kilmer, and they were the Batmans before. And the first movie, of course, Michael Keaton was outstanding. George Clooney and Val Kilmer did what they could do with what they had. Didn't work so well. So then it was almost like a rebooting with Batman Begins.
Right. And this one was the first movie they had done prior to these other ones that they had shown how Batman became Batman, which becomes a pretty big thing now, showing the origin stories of how superheroes become superheroes or villain becomes a villain. Before all this took off, it really all started with this particular movie. And there was a point I saw someone reviewing the movie and talking about this universe. They made a good point. This was the first time they've shown for Batman or just any other type of fantasy type movie in general where they tried to make the fantasy a little more realistic. So this version of Batman had to show how he gets the fighting skills and the gadgets and stuff realistically put into reality, but it's believable, and they try to make it the fantastical real. But it's not seeming so far out there where it doesn't really fit with the theme. So I think that is a perfect way to really describe this movie, is fantasy brought to life and done realistically.
And in this version, we have him being trained by Ra's al Ghul.
Yes.
Instead of some of the other mentors we know he had in the comics and other movies. That was a really big change, because you got to see a Ra's al Ghul that you kind of they were giving you this impression he was a good guy who cared about justice and wanting to train men to lead in this revolution. And then later on you find out, no, it's Ra's al Ghul. Duh! What did you expect?
Right.
And he has to come to terms with knowing the mentor who he looked up to, who helped him, really was this evil guy.
Right.
And in this version, of course, he doesn't get Damian Wayne, who ends up being the grandson of Ra's al Ghul.
Right.
Ra's al Ghul is taken out. There are no spoilers because we know you've had to see this movie after all this time.
Yeah. And they also introduced a different version of Scarecrow, who was actually a lawyer in here at first. And because he wasn't striking fear into anybody when he did these cases, they would still try to fight against him. He takes on the persona of Scarecrow and has might as well say his crew, where they, of course, have the Scarecrow gas where it drives them crazy with the adrenaline. It scares them to death. So you kind of had to fight two villains who, varied in their ways of fighting, but it was still interesting because you have Ra's al Ghul, like you said, who taught Batman everything he knows.
Played by Liam Neeson. Magnificently.
Right. And then you had a Scarecrow, Batman's supposed to be the one striking fear, and then Scarecrow is the one that's putting fear into Batman. So he had two different ways that could be the weaknesses of Batman turned against him in this movie.
Okay, another wonderful part of this movie is we finally got to see Lucius Fox brought to life by Morgan Freeman. This would have to be my favorite version of Lucius Fox. The way Morgan Freeman played him was just, typical Morgan Freeman.
Right.
With his gravitas, but I'm an everyman. And also there was a rapport. I don't know how Christian Bale and Morgan Freeman got along outside of the movie. But within this movie, there was this genuine rapport that worked, this chemistry that worked. And you got to see Lucius be a help to Bruce Wayne. You got to see that he was a stoic man. He was intelligent. He was honorable. And this is the first time you got to see that take place on the big screen. And it was done wonderfully. Alfred, I want to mention also. Did you want to say something about Lucius Fox?
No, you pretty much summed it all up. Eventually, it's for all three movies.
And Alfred, played by Michael Caine. This was a version that made you see, everyone loves Alfred, but he was a more lovable Alfred in terms of Kane gave it his twist where he has this way of playing everyman characters that make you just adore them, and you see the goodness in those characters, and you see the love he had for Bruce and everything he did, how he talked to him, how he assisted him, and he was kind of like, in this version, more of a dad, like when he first came back.
Right.
And he had been gone for a while and disappeared. They thought he was dead. And he was like, you're not going to disappear again, are you? You've got to make sure you don't spoil your father's legacy. And you could just see the little fatherly interactions between them, where he knew, hey, I know that I serve you, but I also love you like a son. So I'm not going to let this part overshadow this part. You know, I'm still here to do this. I don't care that you're 20-some years old. I'm still going to be the daddy.
Right? And it's funny because this was the first time they had brought the origin story, so seeing what happened to Bruce Wayne's parents was really shocking back then. Only now they keep doing it every chance they get. So this before it became really, I mean, we know it's part of his story, but in a way now it's almost run into the ground because by now you know the story, but you have to keep telling it because there might be someone who doesn't know. But for here's the first time it was on screen, and it was really shocking to see that they put this on screen. You could actually see the terror on screen and how he becomes what really leads him to becoming Batman, and all the childhood innocence is just gone in that moment.
Two more characters I want to talk about, and one is the portrayal of Commissioner Gordon by Gary Oldman. And this version of Commissioner Gordon was my favorite until Gotham on Fox in the first 2 seasons. After that, I didn't care for him. But the way that he portrayed Gordon in here was also fantastic. It seemed to have been a running theme throughout this movie where there was this value system, a morality system, and an honorable system that was going on amongst these characters. And everyone, again, was cast so that there was that connectivity amongst them. And they all fit. Even the character Rachel that was created for this movie. Childhood best friend.
She was like the Vicky Vale of this one. They kind of made a, for the movie, only love interest for him.
Right. And she even fit in. It was like odd to see her, but she fit in and it worked. I think this movie itself is fantastic. I've seen a lot of things online about people who don't care for the Christian Bale versions. Well, you know what? You're lost. I love it. And I think he did a fantastic job. And he did such a fantastic job that after the 3rd movie, the studio really tried to get him back, offering him almost triple his salary for another set of movies. And he said he was just ready to move on and do something else. So he had to do a fantastic job, not only in terms of performance and the cast working together, but also in box office draw. And that also lets you know that he's a man who really is after working and doing what he loves, and he's really about the art, because just to be honest, most people getting offered 3 times their salary in triple digits, in the millions, would have done some more movies.
Right.
So I think that stands out as well for not only this movie, Batman Begins, but also the trilogy.
Right. And this is what started it was like the foreshadowing for the superhero boom that you would get later with Marvel.
Very true.
But Batman, of course, is usually always a ticket seller seen at the theaters now. Even before they started this darker trilogy with these movies, you always go to see Batman. Even if the movies turn out to be all that great, it's still something you wanted to see on the big screen. And this is really a testament to how the superhero movies should be made, whether they are action, gritty, dark, or lighthearted comedy or something. It should really tell the story, and it really fits whether you know the lore or not, or you're seeing it reimagined for the theater screen, or regardless of you know the character or not, it should be enjoyable. And watching the story unfold and seeing this character, whether for the first time, for the millionth time, any age.
And last but not least, we definitely have to give a shout out to Heath Ledger playing Joker.
Yes,
in this
sequel.
version. In the sequel. Because at the end of this movie, you got your the calling card that he left.
Right.
And at that time, you didn't know who was going to play the Joker.
Right.
And you were wondering about the casting.
Yes.
And what was going to happen. And then it ended up being Heath Ledger doing a performance that was so memorable that it took Joaquin Phoenix to make people stop thinking about his performance.
Right.
So, again, I know it takes place in the second movie, but I just wanted to give a shout out.
Still the foreshadowing.
Exactly. So we know you've seen Batman Begins. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you love the way that Bale performed and his version of Batman? Do you think there's someone else who's done it better? What do you think of the characters, as we mentioned, of Commissioner Gordon, Lucius Fox, Alfred, and so forth, how they were the versions that were given to us in this movie? Let us know what you think in the comments below.
Right. And be sure to like, subscribe, and notification bell to get updates on future podcasts and World of Paws videos.
And the second and third movies for this trilogy.
Yes. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm Oscar Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.